Every day I see the same old face looking back at me. I'm not sure what's going on, only know I see. I can't help but wonder why could it change.
Alright, and welcome back. Segment 2 is sponsored by Lighters Direct, which is your source for lighters and cigar accessories. Alright, and the next question number 4, comes from Joe via the contact form. Hey guys, a quick newbie question. My humidor seems to do a good job at staying in the 70 to 77% humidity range. 77% humidity, wow. A box of cigars will last me a month or two. My question is, when storing my cigars in the humidor, cello on, off, or on? That's off. Yes, it is off, not of. Off or on. Thank you. Well, we've had this question before. What are your thoughts on the cello on and cello off issue? I know I've got an opinion, so take her away.
Well, generally I would say that this is purely personal preference, and every person you ask, it may give you a different answer. In this particular situation, I would say to leave it on. And the reason I say that is simply because of the range in humidity that you're holding. I think the cellophane is going to help to slow down that transfer, and if you're getting up to 77% humidity, I think that is extremely high. And that cellophane will help regulate that, and hopefully it doesn't stay at 77% too long and comes back down towards the 70 range. Actually, if it were me, I'd like to see it peak at 70%, minimum at about 65. But again, you know, relative humidity is a big personal preference as well. Some people like their cigars a little more humid, while others like them a little drier, and I happen to fall into the camp of preferring my cigars to be a little dry. Now, back to the cellophane on or off thing. Typically, I take this cellophane and leave it just as is. I don't bother taking it off. I don't put it on cigars that don't have it. And the reason being is just because it's a convenience thing. I'm not storing cigars long term. I don't really worry so much about aging results and transfer and off-gassing and whatnot. The cigars go into the cooler, they come out of the cooler, I smoke them. I'm not overly concerned with everything else that's going on. And the reason people say to take it off is because it helps with the aging process. It allows more transfer through the cigar. It doesn't act as a barrier that slows down transfer. In the only situation where I do anything differently with the cellophane is if I'm shipping cigars and I don't have one of these 5-finger bags that I just happened to take the last cigar out of. These bags have individual sleeves, so the cigars don't rub against one another when I package them up and put them in a box and ship them out. If I'm just using a standard bag, I like to take cigars without cellophane and slip a cellophane sleeve around them. I keep probably a dozen cellophane sleeves around from various size cigars just for that occasion. If the cigars have a chance to rub against one another, I think that's when you get wrapper damage. So the only time I add cellophane is if I'm shipping out, and I don't typically do anything with it any other time. It's just I store them as I receive them. So Brian, what do you think about this whole situation of cellophane?
I gotta say, wow, you put cellophane on cigars. That's it never occurred to me to do that, but that's actually really smart. I just thinking about when cigars rattle around in my little Herf box, how much damage it would prevent to throw a little cellophane on a smoke. Particularly my poor Padilla 32s. They're in a drawer and they've rolled around a bit and they've gotten some damage on them from that. But my opinion, of course, cellophane on or off, it's a personal decision, of course. It's up to you. There's not going to be a significant difference. My opinion would be leave it on. In fact, I appreciate it when it comes on cigars. I used to think it looked kind of cheap, like they were bubblegum or something like that, but after seeing what's happened to a number of my smokes that over time that have not been protected with cellophane, seeing the damage, it just drives me nuts. And I prefer them to stay on. I think that if it's either cosmetic, a cosmetic issue for some people, or it's an aging issue. In either case, I would say if you're going to do that, you need to store them in a humidor that doesn't have drawers, so they don't roll around. You need to put them someplace where they're. I just recommend putting stuff that you're aging in a completely separate humidor, because it's going to get beat up if you take the cellophane off, especially if you're handling them like I am frequently with my smokes. So yeah, I would say leave it on. I by default do whatever the manufacturer does, but I mean putting cellophane on a smoke, that's a new one on me. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody doing that. That's pretty funny. But it's a good idea. I've been throwing away a lot of cellophane recently, and I've been wondering what on earth could I be doing with this cellophane instead of throwing it away. And now I have an answer. Actually, I may keep some around just for that particular scenario. So, do you have any more thoughts on this, Walt?
No extra thoughts. This question comes up quite a bit, actually, and we like to address it because we like to cover the questions regardless of whether or not we've talked about them or not. And please keep in mind that if you go to your local smoke shop and you talk to the B&M owner, chances are he may have a different opinion than we do, and this is one of those touchy situations where you've got a 50-50 shot of the answer, because there really is no right answer, there is no wrong answer. So if you feel differently and you were just kind of looking towards us for a suggestion, just go with whatever you think is right. To be honest with you, it's not going to hurt your cigars one way or the other. The cellophane is a good way to keep the cigars from being damaged in transport and whatnot, but they're not going to. The cellophane isn't going to hinder your cigars one way or the other. So experiment and enjoy. Let us know if you have any different results from leaving it on, taking it off, because we're pretty stubborn and stuck in our ways here, that we don't generally do things too much differently than we have for the last couple of years. So with that in mind, good luck and have fun with cellophane and experimenting. So that brings us to question 5, and this comes in from Alex through the contact form. And he says, "Hi guys, I really enjoy your YQMA episodes. I have a question about my thermoelectric wine cooler turned into humidor, and I hope you can answer it in the next YQMA episode. I have an Avanti 828 bottle, and I get a lot of water condensation dripping from the fan and covering the bottom surface. Once it got into the cigar boxes and ruined 10 cigars. Do you have any recommendation for stopping the condensation? I use 65% humidity beads. Keep up the good work. Thanks." So, Brian, what do you think about the condensation problem that Alex is having with his wine chiller?
This is an interesting one. This is one I'm not sure I'm entirely qualified to speak to, having never gone the wine chillador or whatever approach to storing cigars. The idea is intriguing, to say the least, but if you're using beads and you're still getting condensation, I'm thinking you need to use more beads. That's the thing that comes to mind. I don't know the exact layout. I should have gone and checked out what these things look like online, but I'm thinking that maybe what you need to do is get some cedar blocks or slats, like sometimes they come in as spacers in cigar boxes, and lay those out across the bottom so your boxes are elevated a bit. So if it's a case of it dripping down and running into the bottom, at least that way the cedar will soak it up and it'll prevent it from really soaking into your box and your cigars, at least a little bit. I think if you did that and you add a lot more beads, I'd maybe double the amount of beads you're using right now if you have the space for it. That might be a case. I mean, the only other thing I could think of is you have to be careful. You don't want to drive down your humidity too low either. So it's interesting. You're getting the condensation, and you're getting the and you have to worry about keeping at 65%. So I would say try putting some cedar planks or slats or little spacers under your boxes. Lay them out like like railroad ties or whatever to elevate your boxes off the bottom surface, if that's possible in the in the particular chiller that you're using, and see how that works for you, and add a bunch more beads. Alternately, I mean, just random stuff that comes to mind. Put a tray of the unscented kitty litter in the bottom of the thing and set your boxes on that. That'll absorb the water and actually will help regulate the humidity to a certain extent. It's not an exact science, but it's just something that comes to mind. It may actually help prevent you from getting soggy boxes of cigars. I'm shooting from the hip, blind, Walt. So you probably have some really good scientific MacGyver-esque answers for ideas for Alex. So I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Well, actually, I don't, and I'm very confused. Thermoelectric coolers, or thermoelectric units, they essentially use a plate, and the plate gets hot and the plate gets cold. There's no condenser. It's not like a standard refrigerator where there's refrigerant being pumped through lines and it's being condensed and you end up with excess water. So I'm not quite sure where the condensation is coming from, unless the difference in temperature between your cooler and the outside air is there's a severe swing. I don't know how else you would get condensation inside the unit. I've never heard of anyone having problems with condensation before in these units, and that's one of the reasons why, from what I understand, a lot of these people like to use this type of wine chillers, because it's thermoelectric, and the electricity is basically warming or cooling the plate, and there isn't a water byproduct, or at least that's what I've come to think. So I'm not quite sure what's going on, unless you have a condenser unit, and that's where the water is coming from. The only other thing I would suggest looking at is the difference in temperature between the cooler and the outside air. I could see condensation if your cooler was at 60 degrees and your outside air was at 10 degrees. If you kept this thing in your garage or something, you'd get condensation somewhere, I would think. So take a look at just the storage conditions to see where it's going, and let us know what's going on. Give us a little more information as far as alleviating the problem for now, or at least getting around the issue. I think Brian makes an excellent point of putting cedar slats along the bottom of the cooler. For one, it'll elevate your boxes, and two, it'll absorb the water that's dripping down into the and pooling in the bottom of the cooler, or the wine chiller. So it will help regulate humidity by holding that water inside the cedar, and eventually it'll distribute it. So it should create more of a buffer. You'll have to worry about the wood possibly getting waterlogged after a long period of time, but hopefully by long before that happens, you can get this all straightened out. I'd love to get some more information. It's very interesting, and I've never heard of anyone having this type of problem, especially with a thermoelectric unit, but I could be completely wrong and just assuming that there is no condensation involved with a thermoelectric unit. So please get back to us and let us know how things are going. Ryan, you have anything else that sort of popped into mind there? I'm just as confused as you are.
Well, good. I'm not alone in that. You raised a really good point about the differences in the environment inside and outside. I'd recommend that if it's being kept out in the garage like it possibly is, or tool shed, or I don't know, wherever, a teepee, I would recommend maybe moving it to some place where there's going to be less differences in that, whether that's putting it in a basement somewhere or just putting it inside where you normally spend all your time. I think that would be probably a really good way of going, of taking care of that. That's going to, I would think that would eliminate your problem mostly. But I like the cedar plank idea, or cedar slat spacers from inside the box. That just came to me randomly while I was thinking about this. So I really like the idea. I think that as you buy more and more boxes of cigars, you'll have more of them. And what you can do is, if at any point in time they start to become waterlogged, I mean, of course, we're dealing with the symptoms and not the problem here, but you could actually swap those out, set them up somewhere higher up in the humidor so they act as humidification devices instead of water collection devices. So you might actually be able to use that to your advantage if you're not able to solve the problem. So, it could actually turn out to be kind of an interesting thing. It may actually make it so you hardly ever have to use your beads or, re-wet your beads, which, is kind of neat. I mean, add a little extra cedar to the environment and, make it even less of an issue that you have to deal with. So, that's just some thoughts. I think Walt's onto the source of the problem, though, so I'd really look into that. And other than that, I really don't have anything more to say. Good luck.
Well, that about does it for the questions for segment 2. We were one short. So, small talk. Brian, how's your cigar going?
Well, we really breezed through this section, so it's I don't think it's even ashed since the last time we did the update. Maybe once, but I've still got more than a third left of it. It's going well. I think I love this thing. I love the dark Sumatra. It's a great morning smoke to me. I don't know if I'm crazy to smoke these in the morning like I do, but I do, and I like them, so they make me happy. So it's great. I mean, the thing that always bugs me about these is the cap. I can never, and it's probably because of the way I store these, kind of at a lower humidity. The cap is always weird for me. It always unravels a bit. I've never been able to, and I'm gonna have to try punch cutting one of these days. I'm never able to get the cap to just behave and just sit there and be a cap instead of being like a tobacco banner that waves in the breeze. So that's where I'm at. A little irritated, but it's an expected irritation, so it's no big deal. How's things going on your end, Walt?
Well, you're right. We haven't gotten very far into the cigars since the last segment. Mine hasn't changed much. I can't even say that I'm into the following third. I just happened to let it sit a little too long during that last question, and I'm touching it up now. But it's still got a little bit of a dirty taste to it. It's fairly mild. Decent smoke overall. I mean, I'm not having any burn issues. No burn problems, and my coffee is still very, very strong and washing out most of the cigar flavor. So, with that said, I guess we're going to take another quick production break. We'll be back. We'll do a couple of discussion topics and let you be on your way. So sit tight. All right, so we're about halfway through our production break, and I decided to do a little more research on the condensation problem within the wine cooler for Alex. And one of the things that is popping up is a thread from Club Stogie from April of 2005. And it's kind of interesting. The majority of the people are not getting any condensation issue, while one of them is. Now, he's saying that in order to get rid of his condensation problem, he's putting a small PC fan, and he says he has an AC or DC fan that he's wired up to the condenser, so that when the condenser kicks on, this fan turns on. And what he's doing is he's blowing air across the condenser tubes. Oh, wait a minute, that condenser tube doesn't sound like a thermoelectric unit. So now I'm even more confused than I was. Anyway, if it turns out you have a condenser unit and it's not thermoelectric, he's saying what he's doing is he's wiring up a fan to the condenser, blowing across the condenser tubes when the condenser kicks on. He says it's fairly easy to wire this thing up so that everything turns on at one time. And what happens is the air being blown across the condenser tubes is helping evaporate the condensation. In essence, he's recycling the humidity that's condensing on the tubes, so it's evaporating before it's dripping. So that is one thing you might want to look into. Aside from that, I'm not seeing anything else. And I kind of wish I'd have realized it wasn't thermoelectric when I took the camera back on. But if it turns out that you do have if you're not using a thermoelectric cooler, this is one of the ways you may be able to get around the problem. And just quickly running through this, one of the people that are using one of these units has he's getting up to 105 degrees outside, and the chiller is working very well, and he's not having any problem with condensation inside. So anyway, there's a little bit more information on the whole condensation issue. I would say to just doing some Google searches. I've turned up a couple, some information on restaurant units, one in Google Answers. There's just a bunch of stuff out there. Give it a look and see if you can find something that matches your situation. And if and when you contact us again, provide a quick link and explain what's going on, and maybe we can figure this thing out together. Because I'm sure if you're having this problem, others are having it as well, and it'd be great to come up with some sort of answer to answer everyone's problem all at once. So again, good luck, Alex, and we're going to finish our production break, and we'll see you in just a sec.